to the Dungeon Plunger Podcast. My name is Jason Weeb, and this is the show in which I, a real-life janitor and dungeon master, teaches you how to plunge in and run a better Dungeons & Dragons game. Without further ado, let's plunge into this week's episode. All right. Welcome, Dungeon Plunger Union members. I have my +1 plunger, a cup of coffee-flavored holy water, and a very special Union member with me today to help plunge the dungeon and flush evil down the drain. This week, I am chatting with my friend and fellow GM, Carl D. What's up, Carl?
Hey, no, it's cool. We've been talking about getting together and chatting for a long time, so excited to be here. Thanks for the invite. And I like to think of myself as a founding union member. I've been there since the beginning. So
100%, man. I agree. You're the one of the mods on the Dungeon Plunger Union Discord. Super to have you looking over things, shepherding, if you will. There's probably some kind of a like union term or, Dungeon Plunger term that I could come up with, but I'm not that good on the spot.
Maybe enforcing the bylaws or something.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of keep this one a little more casual. I feel like that's something that this show is kind of been missing since I started doing more focus on like interviews and stuff like that. Is it's kind of lost a little bit of that me just kind of like shooting shit and kind of talking about gaming and what kind of stuff is happening. So maybe we could kind of start with just so that people can kind of get an idea of who you are, because I already kind of know a little bit about you. How did you get into gaming?
So I came like much later probably than a lot of people do to role-playing games. So, I grew up in a very rural small town in Wyoming, and like no bookstore, no hobby store. I was vaguely aware that like RPGs, and probably in particular like Dungeons and Dragons, was a thing that existed. And I was like in high school, I definitely, I guess I got my first kind of taste of what it might be through video games, right? So the first one being the original Fallout when that came out in 97, I think. And I like just played the hell out of that, like hours and hours a day. Like when I look at my kids playing video games and I'm like, man, they play a lot of video games. I'm like, well, I did that too. And then I think I was where that kind of transitioned into like an awareness of like D&D was probably walking around in a Target and seeing, the little box PC version of the original Baldur's Gate.
Okay.
And so I like turned that over, looked at the back of that, and like, oh, this looks like Fallout. Oh, but with like elves and stuff. Okay, well, that sounds like fun. So I started playing that. Actually didn't like that nearly as much as Fallout. I think my truest heart is with sci-fi rather than fantasy. I do like fantasy, but again, that's something I kind of came to later. I was already like a big science fiction fan when I was like, by the time I was middle school, high school. So played that. I don't even know if there was anybody for sure in my high school like playing it. I'm sure there were. I think there was one group of kids that were playing D&D, and I thought, well, that sounds like kind of cool, but like never was like, hey, can I hang out with you guys? Or they were never like, hey, you want to try it? I think everybody's very conscious of looking dweeby in high school. So I think that like prevented that connection from happening. So it wasn't really until I was in college that I actually played my first, tabletop role-playing game. And it was D&D 3rd edition. But the way it happened was I was playing this online game. It was kind of like a, one of those multi-user domain things or whatever. It was called Star Wars Combine, and I don't know if I think it's still out there. I think people still play it. And the format of it was you just there was like a web-based thing that you could choose where you would like travel to inside the galaxy, and depending on where you were, that was then the like merc chat access that you would get to a different room. So you had to like travel, and then you could merc chat, and then people were just kind of like freeform role playing. You kind of had a little bit of some basic stats. It was the intent was it was constantly going to get more and more involved over time. The devs would add new features and that kind of thing. And so I was like, oh wow, this is really cool. And I was like, okay, this is like a role playing game, cool. And then I saw the Star Wars D20 book. It was actually the revised core rule book. So I picked that up because I thought that would somehow help me play this online game. And it didn't, but it was a super cool book, and I loved reading it. And it was on my shelf in my dorm room. And this is like where like the magic started, right? So meet this new friend. He comes over to my room. We're getting ready to like go eat at the cafeteria or whatever. And he sees that on the shelf. He's like, "Oh, you play role playing games?" I'm like, "Well, I mean, not really, but I would." He's like, "You want to play D&D?" I'm like, "Yeah." And so then he just like, I don't even think we went to dinner. Like he just went and got his books. I rolled up a character, and we just did like a little like kind of dummy combat just to kind of introduce me to it. And that was kind of the start of it. Found out that more of the guys on our floor were into it. Started playing. Moved out of the dorms, later in college, and then like our place became the gaming place. There was somebody was going to run a game there pretty much every week. I was pretty busy with like class and some of the other stuff I was doing, so I wasn't always there. But we played a lot of Star Wars, a lot of D&D was really what we played most of the time, and our group grew to be like 7, 8 people. A couple of guys would kind of bounce back and forth. Did like a City of the Spider Queen or whatever the 3-0 Drow
Right.
campaign was. Played that, and then I just started like collecting the books. And at this point, I really didn't have an awareness that there was like role playing games outside of Wizards of the Coast. So I just started buying all that stuff, and kind of playing it. And then the first time I ever GM'd was in college there. Like the regular GMs weren't there. One guy was just like, oh, I don't have anything to go. So I just ran some D20 Modern, like totally off the cuff, like just picked a monster out of the back of the book there, and just kind of ran a little scenario. And it was like really hard, right? Like it was like, man, it's like my brain was like just smoking, like doing this for the first time. And so the lesson I learned from that was not like, hey, like you can do this even off the cuff. It was, boy, this is really hard. Maybe I shouldn't do this.
Mm.
So there's a lesson there. You just keep doing it. But yeah. So, and then I got out of graduated college, group split. Everybody went everywhere. This was 2005. So online gaming wasn't really a thing. And then, my job was real busy. I probably missed a couple opportunities to play more. I remember one time I had a friend come over to my apartment, and he saw like all these like role playing games, and he's like, "Oh, that's cool. I'd really love to try that." And I was like, "Oh yeah, that'd be fun. If I can find a game master for us, we could play." And of course, not realizing like, hey, like that game master should have been me, because there were other guys in our building that probably would have been interested in trying it or knew it or whatever, and we could have certainly got a group together, and that would have been a pretty regular game for a couple of years. Probably missed that. So yeah, that's so I went like 17 years without really playing, and it was like 2020 that it was pandemic, everybody's playing, and I started thinking about like, man, I should try to figure out how to do this. And then once the pandemic died down a little bit, I just went to a Pathfinder Society game, like signed up for that, played that a few times, and then got into kind of shifted from there to online gaming because I kind of found the OSR, the NSR, and kind of reading about that. I'm like, hey, this is maybe a play style that kind of suits me a little bit better, like little simpler rules that I can easily wrap my head around, to kind of get used to things again. And then also like one of the things I like about it is that you don't have to like shy away from the meta. we can have a meta discussion. We can think about the game in meta
Mhm.
terms without feeling like we're, you know, messing with somebody's experience. And so I kind of like that play style kind of didn't necessarily like, oh, this is how you have to play, right? But it allowed you to do that if that's what you needed to do. If that's how your head works, you can talk about it. You can figure it out. You can use your skills as a person to do the problem solving rather than being like, oh, my character's not good at this. Then we can't. We're stuck.
Yeah.
And that was kind of. And then I played in a basic fantasy online campaign for quite a long time, where I kind of learned that, and then finally got a group together. Buddy of ours, Matt C.
Hmm.
We figured out that we lived within driving distance of each other after meeting on a random Discord, from the RPR Discord actually.
Role play rescue. Yeah.
Um, yep. And so I'm like, hey, we need to figure this out, and so we got that together. I shanghaied two of my neighbors. Like again, another big lesson for me is, hey, if you don't have gamer friends, make your friends gamers. Um, and one guy, Ben, like he's a great dude. Like very much like a sports guy and everything. And he's like, I don't know. And his wife's like, no, you need a hobby. Go play with them. And he like took to it like that. Really great player, just like instantly. So it's like people you don't even expect, may just really enjoy the game or just want to hang out. And it's a great way to just hang out. So
Yeah.
that was a lesson. Moved again, started the group that you and I play in. And here we are. You and I have been playing in that game for going on, I think, 14 months. We played a bunch of different stuff. But
Yeah. No, it's been really awesome. I'm honestly so glad to have been able to because online gaming up until I met you guys for me hasn't been the greatest. I tried during the pandemic and it kind of fell flat. And part of it was like I just had the one monitor, so it made it difficult for me to because lots of times game masters want to put up screens of other stuff for you to look at, and it was difficult to look at that and then switch between that and my character sheet and then trying to see the players, because I feel like I need to see people to kind of get a gauge of where people are at. And yeah, it wasn't until I started playing with you guys, and then I was like, look, if I'm going to do this and make it serious, I need to get another monitor. And that really changed stuff. And then not only that, but I also think that it was just a question of finding people that I clicked with.
mhm.
And, I think we all share very similar kind of attitudes towards how the game should be played, and, or at least not how it should be played, but how what we enjoy about the game, and just good camaraderie between
Mhm.
all of us. So I'm super thankful that you invited me to join, and yeah. So dude, that there is so much to unpack in what you were talking about there. Like when you're talking about high school and not wanting to be nerdy, I remember I was getting into the Star Wars books. Like they had just been published by Timothy Zahn, and they started
Mhm.
the whole new Star Wars series. And so I'm reading the second one, and this is back in the day, when the jeans were super huge and the pockets were massive. And so I
The wallet
had
was
one of
on a
the
chain.
yeah, exactly. And so I had the novel in my pocket because I didn't want to walk around with it, because I didn't want people to be like, "Oh, look at that nerd, and you like Star Wars." Oh. And I have to say, now these days, I mean, we're living in a nerd renaissance. So, you don't need to be ashamed of that kind of stuff anymore. I mean, I don't think you should have been ashamed of it then, but I just didn't have the cojones then to be able to be like, hey, it's cool, man. I got my thing. If if you're not down with it, that's cool. One of the things that kind of occurred to me was, so you started off playing computer games and then you kind of transitioned into the role playing. What was, because I know my experience when I first started the game, there was a little bit of like a disconnect in the sense of like, wait a minute, this isn't what I thought D&D was going to be. I thought it was going to be more like free form, and there was a lot of really weird rules about like, Vancy and magic and saving throws, and you just like you roll a die to make an attack, but when it comes to casting a spell, it just happens and things like that. So what was your experience like going from like a computer game to like role playing?
I don't know if I like zeroed in on the those same kind of things. I think what I enjoyed the most about it was really like sitting around with friends and you know playing through a story, creating a story, right? Like so, I remember one time I went skiing with my dad when I was like I don't know, it was probably a junior or senior in college. Like went home, we went skiing, and we're sitting on the lift, and he's like, "Oh, so what are you guys doing?" And I explained to him like what D&D is, like what role playing games are, and this is my my Canadian dad who's from Winnipeg there, so
Represent.
yeah. And so I tell him about it. There's kind of this like long pause, it's like tuk, 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 as you go up the ski lift there. And he's like, so you get together with your friends and you eat pizza and you tell a story and there's some like kind of rules, that kind of stuff. You drink a little beer and that's it, right? I'm like, yeah. Kind of another long pause. He says, sounds pretty good. And that was the conversation, and
Hmm.
and that's really what it is. Like, with our group, it's coming together, and we probably more than many groups, and I think this is like the strength of it, right? Like, there's like a period at the beginning where we all just like vent about life, work, what's happening in the world,
Yeah.
and then eventually we like, okay, hey, we need to play a little bit, and then we'll play, and then we'll get real tired, and then we'll be like, okay, well let's put a pin in it here, and then often we keep talking for like another hour, like after we all thought we needed to go get some sleep, and that's what's like special about it, right? Is finding when you find the right people, like it isn't just that you are a game group, it's that you are friends,
Yeah.
and this is like the vehicle that we like, like guys, we kind of need something to do, and I think girls too, like
Hmm.
whatever. It's just this is like a thing to center, become like kind of the nexus of the relationship. And I think what's awesome about role playing games is because they appeal to like nerdy folks like us. So like I think my favorite thing to say, like what was the thing that really like captivated me with tabletop role playing games is you get this like giant book, and the thing I love about like science fiction worlds or fantasy worlds, good ones, right, is that there is like a history and maybe a different kind of almost like metaphysics, like the world works differently than our world, and how do you describe that mechanically, to me is like fascinating, which is why I like to look at a lot of different why I like to buy a bunch of different games and kind of see how they do that, because it's always really interesting. Like, oh, you get the Star Wars role playing game. Like, well, how does the Force work, right?
Mm.
And then you like read that and you're like, yeah, that does seem right. Like, minus the modifiers and the rolls, right? It's the way in which that part of the world interacts with the other parts of the world that is unique to that like setting. And sitting and learning that and kind of analyzing that and internalizing that, to me, is very enjoyable, which is why it's fun just to read a rule set, even if you're not immediately sure you really want to play it. And then there's always pieces of it that are fascinating, and if you want to like do your own thing, or just to understand, you can understand then differently a game that you do play,
Mm.
in the context of, okay, I understand this mechanical thing that's happening, how it relates to that world, and then looking at this this other world that has maybe very different mechanics in how it works inside the game. You kind of get like a deeper understanding of that, and you can appreciate like you maybe will see like a nuance in the game you play that you didn't see before, and you'll like that more, or you'll see something you don't like and the same thing, like,
Right.
whoa, that's not quite right, but this system does that very well.
You know, one of the things that like surprises me is like the fact that you and I both really love Star Wars, and yet we have not played a version of Star Wars yet, which I figure we got to rectify that at some point. So one of the things that you brought up was like you'd started with like third edition. You'd started with like the D20. So like, you know, the D20 Star Wars and the D20 modern. At what point and what exactly was it that you transitioned from that more like modern crunchy style of game towards the more like OSR stuff? Because like to me that's been like one of the things that I really enjoy about playing with you guys is that you guys really gave me an opportunity to try a lot of different games that are like non OSR. So we like, you know, we've done Mothership, we've done Karen, we've done a variety of different Year Zero and Free League games. So like what was the transition and what exactly is the draw for you for that?
So I'm trying to like remember because it happened over time, and it kind of happened in almost like phases. So I think I've had this awareness of the OSR for a while. And because like I remember back in like 2012, I don't even know how I felt. Like I was like, okay, what? Actually, it might have been. I think it was probably just prior to 2014 when fifth edition dropped, which I bought those books right away. I read those. I was like, man, this seems great because I was kind of when I went through. So there was a period like in the late 2000s, like 2000. I guess it was like 2010, 2012. That was kind of like, oh man, I'm never going to play again. Like, why do I have all these books? Like, I know I enjoy reading them, but they're filling up the house.
Mm.
And so in 2012, I like kind of did like a purge. Like I sold almost everything I had. And in some ways, I think that was like a good, actually like mental thing. Like I needed to like kind of clear it out and then start over. And I've since kind of gone back and bought pieces of that again. But
Right.
so and then in like 2012, after I'd done that, I ran into I don't know if you've ever heard of Tabletop, Will Wheaton's like board game
Yep.
show that he did. So I found that, and I found the episode that they did where they played Dragon Age, which is like a very modern game,
Mm-hmm.
right? But the way that they played it, it was like him and Chris Hartwick and trying to remember who else was in there. The guy that does the voice for Darth Maul in and
Oh, yeah, I know.
yeah, and he was in the Force
Is
Awakens
it
video
Sam
game
Witwer?
series. Yes. And so they played this game, and the way that they played it reminded me so much of just the kind of, hey, we're gonna have fun. Like serious things are gonna happen in the game, but we are having fun. There's the opportunity to be kind of silly. Like we're not being like totally rigid in a lot of stuff. I'm like, man, that those people on that video are having a blast.
Mm.
Right. And so then I'm like, I need to like figure out how to kind of get back into this. And at that time, RPGs were not, they hadn't had their, 2014 D&D 5e renaissance yet. So I did watch a lot of the board game stuff, and I got really into board games. I bought a bunch of board games. And I joined a board game group. I was playing that. But while I'm doing that, I'm like kind of discovering now where the hobby's been since I was like, and more, it opened my aperture, like, hell, with these other games, it isn't just, D&D. And that's like, I found Pathfinder for the first time back then, because I was like, oh, I kind of want to get my 3E books back. And I'm like, oh, wait, what's it? I completely missed that fourth edition was a thing.
Oh, really?
And I looked at I looked at 4E and I'm like, oh, this is really confusing. There's like 3 different players books that you have to get all the classes. I'm like, I don't know.
Mm,
Like, can I just get third edition again, 3.5? I didn't really. We when we played in college, like we just had like a mix of 3 and 3.5, and I don't even think we knew there was a difference. It was like, oh, that's a cool cover, slightly different than my cover. Like, okay, I think we just assumed it was just a straight reprint.
mm.
So I found, Pathfinder 1, and I opened that up, and I'm like, oh, yep, this is the game that I remember. But then I was like, well, okay, there's this thing that exists that I didn't know existed. So what else kind of exists out there? And I got like the core books for Castles and Crusades, like read through those. I'm like, oh, this is totally different. And I think at that point is where I probably first encountered the idea of an OSR, even though like whether Castles and Crusades is OSR is like one of those things that's a debate, because I think at that time it was definitely like, no, it's not a retro clone, so it's not. Or maybe it is because it plays in that same style of, it's like, third edition meets first edition kind of a thing.
This is a
But
good.
then I just kind of like drifted off to wherever, but I had those things. And then it was probably, I think I was just like looking at like stuff on Amazon, like, and I saw Merkboard. And I'm
Okay.
like, oh, okay. I just looked at the cover of that. I'm like, what is this? This looks awesome. I like metal. This looks like D&D, like with more metal. So I got that, I read through that. And I think at that point is where I'm like, okay, what are the other games that are like this? And that's where, start learning about like Swords and Wizardry, Astonishing Sorcerers and Swordsmen of Hyperborea, all those kinds of things that you're like,
Right.
oh, wow, there's all these other things out there. The retro clones, like figuring out that, like learning what retro clone corresponds to what edition, and then learning about all the editions. And so it was just kind of this fun activity of like learning about that scene and the games that people play there. And then that's what like kind of triggered me, like, hey, I want to try playing in this play style. And so I found a group I think on the BFRPG Discord. They're like, hey, I'm putting together a group. So I like, rolled the dice with random people. Ended up getting along with them, pretty good. We had some differences. That was kind of ultimately the reason, like, yeah, I like playing with these guys, but I don't know that I want to be like really good friends with these
Mm.
guys. I think there's enough, background life things that would maybe prevent us from clicking in that kind of way. And so I kind of drifted away. I mean, the group kind of fell apart because the game master had some like pretty serious life changes that he wasn't able to run for months and months as he went through that. So I just kind of moved on, and that's when I like started. Okay, I need to learn how to do this myself.
Mm. That's a that's a really good transition because so one of the things that I feel like doesn't get talked about enough on the show now that I do interviews is like talking about game mastering, how to be a better game master, and all that kind of stuff. So, what exactly is it that like drew you or helped you get over your fear of being that game master? Because you talk about that time when you were like, oh man, I that was a missed opportunity when that friend
Mm-hmm.
came in and said, hey, you play role playing games, and you were like, I totally could have ran that game, and now here you are, every 2 weeks you're running a game for us. You're a great game master.
Thanks.
What do you talk about that transition to like becoming the game master? And there was something that on your blog, Transorbital Game Pit, that I really struck me. You have a thing that says that you're on a mission to become the world's most consistently okay GM. So what does that mean? Like let's dive into this.
Okay, yeah, no, so that is me, like my little like kind of, I guess, one line manifesto of giving myself permission to grow, right? That there is no I want to be this kind of tree that's this tall. It is, I'm going to figure out what kind of tree we're going to become through play. and experimenting with it, and it's never going to be over, right? Like I'm never going to it's like, oh, I don't ever want to be so set in what I'm doing that growth becomes impossible. And it's
Mm-hmm.
also permission to not be amazing all the time, which I think is the thing that's kept me from like pulling the trigger and being like, no, I can do this. Was this idea, because you know the guys that I played with, like one game master, like he could run a game, he could lay on the couch and stare at the ceiling and like run a game, you know, and because he accepted that, like, hey, there's some basic mechanics here. I just need to remember, hey, you know, make a skill check, do the thing, whatever. Tell me what you're doing. Describe what happens. You know, that kind of that he had a strong understanding of that, like most basic procedure of describe the world, players describe their actions, describe, you know, maybe you roll, maybe you don't, resolve it. How has the world changed as a result of that? Go back to step one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think like understanding that fundamentally it's very simple, most of the time, right? And depending on the game you play, that can become more complicated or less complicated. But ultimately, like a lot of it, when you're at the table and you're doing it, it really doesn't matter. You know, like as long as it's satisfying, like it doesn't seem unfair, or it isn't just arbitrary, or it doesn't follow from what's happened before in a way that we can like click it together, which human brain is great at, like taking the things that don't seem to follow and be like, oh, that means this. Um, you just kind of can just kind of go with it. And I sort of lost my train of thought there.
No, that's I think basically, what you're saying is like, listen, we're always learning how to be a game master, and you know, probably instead of just doing it and hoping for, like, natural improvement, and that, like, when we put this, I feel like I don't feel like I'm saying that very well, but I think the idea is that, like, when you put all this pressure on yourself to
Mm-hmm.
be this great game master, that's when things fall apart. I I was on a Discord recently, and one of the people there was lamenting about how, like, every time they try to run a game, they get really excited, they put all this effort into it, and then the game falls apart and they feel really bad. They feel like they're a bad game master. They feel like they can't run a game and that there's something wrong with them, right? And what was really interesting was the advice that people were giving this person was like, dude, you're trying too hard. You need to, like, just go with the flow. Like, try to do a little, like, try to do less, right? I think sometimes we think like, oh, if I put more effort, it's going to be better. And we have these expectations in our minds of, like, the kind of game that we're hoping is going to happen. And when those
Mm-hmm.
expectations aren't met, we're like, oh crap, I suck at this, and maybe I shouldn't be being a game master. And if we just let it go and just go with the flow more, we'd probably have a lot more fun. And I think my experience has been that, like, I put this pressure on myself all the time. I say to my players, I'm like, oh, dudes, I hope you guys had fun tonight. And they're like, yeah, bro, we had a lot of fun. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I don't feel like I did a good enough job. And they're like, what are you talking about? So I think really that's what you're saying, is that we should strive to be okay, consistently okay.
Yeah, and it's give yourself permission. Like I think one of the things that really helped me was to quit worrying about pacing.
Mm,
I think that's the thing that people get. One of the things that people get hung up on is that, oh, I've got to like the belief that if the game, exactly what's happening in the game isn't constantly advancing at a pace, that we will automatically lose engagement. And I don't think
mm,
that's true, right? Like if people are drifting off to go do other things or whatever, they're like checking their phone or whatever it is, then maybe that's true. But if we're like trying to figure out what's happening in the game and we are
Right.
still engaged with, okay, what does this mean? Okay, I will, and I think what gets people hung up on that is that they think, okay, in order to maintain pacing, I have to have either put them on like kind of this railroad where I know what's going to happen next and like keep them going along there so that, okay, next thing, check, check, you know, step one, sub step A, here we go. Um, but then you're like, you're taking away that agency. But what you can do though is you can, in giving the players the agency, you are putting some of that on them, right? So the pacing is now dictated by their decisions and how long it takes them to make a decision. Because sometimes it takes a while for them to figure out, especially once players realize that, oh, I can actually do or attempt really whatever I think. Like, oh, well, maybe I can hide it, like hide myself on top of the bookshelf or something, whatever it is, or go a completely different direction, or I don't think we want to go this. Like, okay, I see where this is going. There's going to be an awful monster there. Let's go do something different because we're probably just going to die at this point. We need to go do something in order to be better prepared to face this hazard. That now we've gotten this far. We know it's there. We're not now yet committed to the combat or whatever it is. Like
Right.
maybe we need to go back and we've heard about this other thing. Well, there's maybe a something somewhere else that we think we can bring to come back here to help bring it back here and help us in this particular situation. So we're going to go do that instead. And while they're doing that, while they're figuring this out, right? Like you as a GM can, and this is like the thing I've learned too, is just shut up and
Mm,
listen. And if your players are talking about this stuff, they are engaged, right? They
hmm.
may not be completely, immersed from the point of view of their character at that moment, but they are engaging with the game world and they are thinking through it. And that's like, you can listen what they want to do and prepare yourself to move to that. And another thing too is it's okay to say, okay, like, hey, you guys are, this is awesome, or like kind of going in a different direction. I need just a few minutes to kind of, I know where you're going now. I need to pull up that file.
Hmm.
I need to, reference the monster manual or whatever to figure out the thing so that I have the stuff. I need to gather some different tools to be ready to do that. It's not going to take long. We've been playing for an hour. How about everybody go use the bathroom, fill up your
Right.
beverages, grab a snack, whatever it is. We'll be back here in like 5 minutes. And then, while you're doing that, they'll kind of filter back and then they might just kind of chat about stuff a little bit, but that's okay. It is okay. Cause, and then, as the game master, at some point you gotta, snap the line and be like, all right, here we
Right.
go. You guys ready? Oh yeah. Okay. Let's go do this other thing. So, give yourself permission to take the time you need to enable that agency for the players. Cause once they figure that out, like, okay, I'm paying a small cost of pacing or engagement here for a moment so that I can do what I want to do. And the game is going to go somewhere else. And that's when I think the game like opens up, and the possibilities can be realized, but not always can those possibilities be realized if you just kind of be like, oh, I'm not ready to do that. And I think we have a great advantage in our group too. Where it's an advantage for me as the regular GM, right? Is that everybody in the group is also a game master,
Mm,
and everybody
interesting.
gets it, and I think that's one of the things about, um, I think the OSR in particular is a community of GM players and player GMs, like,
Hmm.
because it does have that, it does look more accessible to GM for to a certain extent that people are much more willing because they're like, oh, this is simple rules. I know the rules because I played them for a little bit. Um, there's less there's less mechanical surprises, I think, in simpler systems, which makes it easier to start. If you look at something like Pathfinder or
Mm,
any like game that has a lot of player options, that can become intimidating for I think really only because there's the expectation that the GM understands all the things that the players can do, right? Whereas if you have fewer mechanical things that a player can do, it becomes a little bit easier to kind of integrate that and handle it, right? I think that's also sort of a false understanding of that because your player should know how it works.
hmm.
And maybe this is like why the rail if you're on a railroad with weird options, it can kind of wreck the railroad, right? Like when the thing that you didn't expect them to be able to do
Yeah.
kind of like blows up the scenario that you're trying to run. Whereas if you're not tied to that, it doesn't matter, right? Like so if a player pulls out their super magic, crazy, slightly game breaking ability, and it kind of just like they kind of are able to like bypass that little scenario, it's less of a big deal.
Yeah.
If you're not also kind of tied to this, well, this is something that was supposed to happen. Well, then, the villain's not going to get their monologue that then delivers this bit of information that they needed to go to step one, 1B. Then it's if you're not like on that, it doesn't matter as much.
It's really weird. Last night, I ran my Curse of Strahd and I had a TPK in the Death House with my ladies
Mm-hmm.
group. And so we were kind of talking afterwards, and I was like, okay, so we did 4 sessions of 5th edition 2024. I'd gotten the new books. I wanted to test them out. I wanted to see, and I hadn't played 5th edition in like years. Despite saying like I'm a Dungeons and Dragons player, I'm like I've played everything except for Dungeons and Dragons like since I started the podcast. And so before we had started playing 5th edition, we had started with Shadow Dark, and I ran them through Winter's Daughter and A Hole in the Oak, which was like tons of fun. Those are fabulous adventures. And I asked them, I said, so what's the consensus? How do you guys feel about like Shadow Dark versus 5th edition? And, do you have a preference over one or the other? And they were kind of like, well, Shadow Dark, the rules were very simple, and some of them were very much like it was a nice like training wheels to get them ready to play 5th edition. One of them described it as it feels like an old shoe that fits perfectly, which I thought was an interesting kind of way to kind of describe it. But they were like, a lot of them were like, I like the complexity of the mechanics, like the fact that there's more kinds of things that they can do. And they're kind of like, it's kind of like they're learning as they're going along of like, ooh, that's an option. Oh, how do I use these like special abilities and stuff that I have to like affect things around them? But I think had I thrown them directly into that, it probably would have been very, very overwhelming for them. But
Mm-hmm.
talking to what you're saying about, when you have all these special abilities and you're learning the game and you're not aware of what the players are capable of, like that can be very intimidating as a game master, right? Like all of a sudden it's like, what do you mean you could do that? Like everything that I had planned in my mind that the villain was going to do, that whatever was going to happen is now completely shot. And now you're stuck with this like, well, do I go for the comfort of the railroad and try to like get them onto what I had already had kind of planned in my mind? Or do I like let this go in a whole new direction? And I think that can be really, I think, so like you talk about how the OSR and like simpler games like that, because they have less mechanics, can be liberating in a sense of like, oh, well, there's less rule stuff. It could likewise can also be more intimidating because it's like, well, I don't know how to adjudicate these things. I don't know how to roll with those open-ended punches, if that makes any sense. Um, I don't really know where I was going with that, but
It's fine. I'm sure we'll hit this wall again. Um, yeah, so I want to like kind of go. So TPK, so the death house is like right at the beginning of the adventure, right? Like that's
yeah,
it's the gateway into Barovia, essentially.
yeah,
I'll just share like another thing that I've realized, right? Like TPKs can be kind of like a bummer, especially like early in there. I would say you don't necessarily need to abandon that campaign. It's actually really fun, and I think players, well, I do anyway, get kind of a weird sense of like joy out of okay, new characters. Okay, but
mm,
what's different now that a party has already gone into the death house, right? Like they've gone in there, they all died. Their bodies are probably still in there, right?
right,
And so like to go back to my first time I played, in the OSR style in that BFRPG campaign, our first session into the the old I think it's the old fort in the Morgan's fort. I'm getting that right.
yeah.
I
I
don't
think
know.
that sounds right.
You know, little it's the BFRG equivalent of Keep on the Borderlands
Okay,
little module, right? So it has a little town, has a couple of dungeons you can go explore. So the close one is that went in there. My little halfling thief failed his. He wasn't able to sneak, and a bunch of wolves came out and killed us. And that was like we're all like very much into the OSR thing, like, oh, that's TPK, consequences are real. Yeah, that was awesome, guys. Like high fives, we all died. Um, but then we made new characters, and then we went in there and we're like, oh, we're going to be able to go get like some of our stuff from those other
mm,
guys, and it's really fun to go in there and like we're now operating on some meta knowledge of okay, there's a wolf's den in there, like the characters aren't necessarily conducting themselves in that way, except that we as players are being much more cautious. We know that there's wolves and that they killed us last time. Player knowledge, right? The OSR is okay with that. Like you don't have to like
right.
pretend about it. Like we can have the out of character discussion. Like okay, let's be sneaky. We're going in there like, oh, there's a dead body. Cool. Oh, it's a halfling. He has some cool stuff. And so we like got all that. We like looted our own bodies, went and like sold that, used that to then we went into this whole like plan of how we were gonna like go through the dungeon where we went and we spent like a whole bunch of time like cutting down trees, making like the little like spiky it's not like I can't remember. I looked up what it is, but you see them in like Civil War, World War One, where like they use the
Oh,
boards. It's like wooden barbed wire basically, where you have this
right.
the cross things like this. Spice. We made a bunch of those, and we would move those around the dungeon as we were like to like okay, we're not going to go down this corridor, so we put that in there, and so that we would have a little bit of time if something randomly like rolled that way, and then using and then a lot of what you encounter then is you encounter random encounters, right? Which I
Right.
think is another old school thing that you don't necessarily see as much in modern designs. I think that's changing. I think the OSR's influence on more trad games or modern games is definitely there, where people understand the value of having those tools, because I mean you can get a whole session out of a random encounter
Yeah.
that and that's where you learn that you can do that, you rolled up the whatever 1d8 goblins or whatever, and then you do the well, I'm blanking right here, the reaction roll, right?
Right.
And that now gives you an idea of this doesn't need necessarily, it won't automatically be combat unless you get like actually there's a pretty low probability in most of those systems that it's immediately a hostile encounter.
Right.
And so there's an opportunity to talk to the goblins and find out what's going on with the goblins. And then you can find out like, oh yeah, there's some kobolds in here or whatever that have taken over some of our digs in the dungeon down here. Oh, okay. Well, maybe look, maybe you help us, we help you. And all of a sudden everything about the dungeon now is different.
Yep.
Everything about the scenario, the story, all of it is changing now in real time. And as you get used to that, as both a GM and players, again, that's another point where the game opens up. And I think that's what modern games, and again, I say like less so now because I think people are picking up on this. Like lose is those old games, like the D&D, the DMG, first edition has these tools that allow you to create that emergent gameplay and to be able to roll with it, like both figuratively and literally, right? To
Yep.
create that scenario in real time as it's developing and it's responding to the player's actions. And then when we hit that little point where you're like, I don't know what's supposed to happen here. Like several things could happen. It might prompt you to roll another thing, but you have those tools then to help you answer that question in a less arbitrary way, where it isn't just GM fiat. You're rolling dice and then you're going with the result. And unexpected things happen, and that's super satisfying, I think.
So I kind of wanted to like shift gears a little bit because there was a couple of things that I wanted to like talk to you about. So one of the first things that we did when our group got together was is you ran Karen a play by post.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about that experience? Like how did you feel? Because I feel like this is like a kind of game mastering and a type of game that we don't hear about very often. So as a game master, what did you feel about that, and how do you feel like it differed from running like a regular or a traditional kind of game?
So I think the biggest difference, and I based a lot of the way we ran that on Yohai Gall's kind of advice for running play by post. And he's since we started that, he actually finally published on his blog, New School Revolution. He published the way that he does it in very great detail. I think that's a great resource if you're thinking about doing a play by post. And I think what's great about it is it doesn't necessarily need to be as different from the way you run any other game in the tools that you use and how you do it. I think the biggest shift in that is when prep and play happen, right? Like, so you do have time as the game master to do the things that I've been talking about, right? Like, okay, figure out the next thing, find the stuff that I need. I can look something up. You have time to do that. So you're not prepping. You're not doing prep for a 4-hour game session. You're just literally doing prep for the next round or turn.
Mm.
And that's cool. If you get real busy in life, and that's kind of what happened. Like we quit doing that. I was finally like, hey, guys, I'm just like, I don't have the day-to-day bandwidth right now to kind of keep this going in a way that feels good.
Right.
And that's because, so what's great about a play-by-post is that everybody I think is like thinking about it like all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, especially as a game master, you're always like, you're just like waiting for the last person to post. And we were good. Like we had good discipline. I was probably towards the end there, I was probably like the least disciplined as the game master, but you do have more to think about as the GM there about how to set up the next thing, right? And thinking through the consequences of what just happened. But it just at a certain point I was like, I kind of need to like take this out of my like every day, all day, so that I can deal with the things that are going on, mostly at work.
Right.
And that's the temptation of it, is because it's right here on your phone. It's like, oh man, anytime I have a little bit of time, I can do this. Um, but it is fun, and it is a way. And I like, I've kind of thought like, oh, maybe we should have done like every 2 days, but then is that, so trying to figure out how that posting regularity, um, in a way that you can manage it, because it does kind of grow to become like a little bit bigger thing than you
Mm.
sort of expect, because it is more than just reading the Discord about what everybody did and then making that reply. Now you could probably dial that back a little bit too, and just go with it. Maybe I was overthinking it at a certain point, but it got to like this critical mass where I thought it was actually really good, right? Like I was really enjoying it, like all the things, but it then kind of just, the weight of it was just a little bit too much to carry right at that time,
Yeah.
you know.
I think so. There was a couple of experiences that I felt about it. So first, when we first started playing, like everybody was like super gung ho, and it was like what had started as being like we're gonna post once a day turned into like everybody was posting like multiple times a day, which I felt was like super overwhelming for me.
Yeah, and I had to dial that back.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then it got dialed back, but I still feel like I feel like the regularity of it maybe been was too much, in the sense of
Mm-hmm.
like, maybe every day was too much instead of, maybe like once a week would have been better. I just wonder, like, was it the cognitive load of like constantly having to think about that, or do you think like if you were to like, okay, I just need to do this like one time this week, then your mind would be like set free to be like, okay, I don't need to think about this for another week. Do you think that
Mm-hmm.
would have helped?
Um, I don't know. Maybe I think the thing that would have helped, and Yohai's talked about this either on Between Two Cairns or maybe on his blog. I'm not sure. I think maybe what could have like saved that game a little bit better is maybe I dial it back to like every other day or something. I think that the danger if you stretch it out too long, because you think about like, we played several months
Mm-hmm.
every day, through Nightmare Over Ragged Hollow using
Very
Cairn
awesome.
Second Edition, which is a great adventure. But if you stretch it out too much, I think the the presence of it in your mind to a certain extent has to be constant to kind of understand. Otherwise, I think you start to, maybe if you stretch out the continuity too much, that my hand here, like things fall off and you're like, oh wait, what was that? Like, okay, where are we really? I mean, the
Right.
good thing is it's all there. You can
Right.
go back up and you can like reboot your brain, but then that's another commitment of time. You thought you had 15 minutes to make a post, but you spent 15 minutes
Right.
refreshing your
Catching
mind
up.
on what's really going on. I think the thing that would have been good though, and I'd thought about this at the time, and now that we're talking about it, I feel more strongly that this would have been good, is periodically have like periods where we're going to post and play, like those times when everybody's going like boom, 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 boom. Like those are awesome. I think you set a time for that like synchronous play,
Mm,
where it's almost like you're getting together as a game group, but we're just now furiously texting, for an hour on
interesting.
Sunday afternoon or something like that,
Right.
where we're all there, and we can really push it forward, because it does go much more slowly. I think about 2 weeks at the way we were doing it. I think 2 weeks of regular post, maybe even like a month. I was probably closer to like a month of posting. I think it's probably a week to an hour is probably how it works out to 1 week of everybody posting every day. Maybe some days a little bit more, equates to maybe about an hour of regular Discord or table play,
Hmm.
right? So there's it takes a lot longer, I guess, is the kind of the point, and you got to kind of wrap your head around it. Like we probably, I think we played, it was 4 months.
I don't know if I don't remember the time, but it does. Despite that, we didn't actually finish the adventure. We did a significant amount of stuff, and I felt like we did a lot of role playing. Like that was the first play by post that I'd ever done. And I felt like, wow, this is a lot cooler than I actually thought it was going to be. Cause I'm not going to lie. When you first proposed it, I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. Like, feels like a commitment and it feels like, I don't know. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was pleasantly surprised to start and do it. And but yeah, it was the scenario was fantastic. The way you ran it was fantastic. The little interactions that we had with various NPCs was hilarious sometimes. Like it's such a great module, and you really brought it to life. I wonder because I know we were coming up to like a dungeon crawl, so I think that would have
Mm-hmm.
been a very big change of style to how we had been playing it up to that point. I would have been curious to see how that went.
Yeah. Well, and that was maybe part of the reason that I was almost like less excited about it. Not that it was a dungeon crawl, but um, I'd listened to like an interview. I think it was Joseph Lewis, the author of that, with was on Ship of the Dead with
Mm,
Limithron, and he was talking about the module, and they were talking about making your dungeons too realistic,
right,
and he kind of was lamenting that the temple, which is where you guys we were ready to go into the temple. It's like it's laid out like a big temple abbey thing, just the way you would expect. So like corridors with doors on both sides. He's like it's not as much. He was kind of almost criticizing that decision that he made it too realistic. And Limithron with his pirate board was kind of like, yeah, it's hard to do with a ship too, because like there's only ships are kind of, it's not as interesting to explore when you can kind of intuit the layout too much, right? And so
right.
I think if I hadn't listened to that, I think it would have,
Mm,
because it's kind of like maybe it's, I think it would, and I played around with this like, hey, maybe we just like finish this up in one of our online sessions, like we just do it, because I think that would be easier to do in person play, or Discord play. Just really they're mechanically they work the same, right?
right.
um to just be like, okay, there's along these corridors, oh yeah, we're going to search all the rooms, and we could kind of like maybe get through it that way. I guess you could do that in play by post too, but I guess my like fear was like, this floor has like, this is where all the like monks live or whatever, and so every room is like a little like chamber bedroom thing. And we're gonna go, every day we'll search one of the 12 rooms.
Right.
And I was just kind of like, oh, I don't know, that doesn't seem super exciting. The reality is it would have not probably been that, because there would have been, all the weird stuff that's down there would have been attacking you, and that's what we'd be
Mm.
doing. I think it just, if it had been more of if I had perceived it, I guess, more as a traditional weird dungeon rather than kind of searching a medieval, office building. Um, but I mean, we've done that too in Mothership, where it works out, like, like,
Yeah.
but at that point I wasn't sure about it, and it didn't, I wasn't as excited to do it, uh, and it ended, for fear of it not being as enjoyable, I guess.
So, what kind of lessons would you take away from your time of doing that? Like, what would you do differently, or what would you definitely do again?
Um, so the reason that we used Karen was, one, I was excited to use it, which is a good reason. And also it's a roll under, which, Yohai points out, like, roll under when you understand when you have a like simple target that you always have to hit, works really well for online play, because it you don't necessarily need to think about a lot of modifiers, or the
Right.
modifiers are baked in, whatever it is. So that was part of it. And I also wanted to I, I wanted to use two different things. I wanted to use something that was statted for OSE and use it in Cairn just as partly the exercise. Although there's really good on the Cairn website, they have the conversions for a lot of popular modules. So
Okay.
that's easy. You can just pull like the monster stats are done for you. I didn't ever always agree with the changes that the author of that made, but 95% of it was like spot on, I thought. But um, so I guess there's that. Like the roll under. Thinking back now, I don't know that trying to do a roll under, which roll under doesn't necessarily mean like a light game either. GURPS is roll under, BRP is roll under, but it's your targets are a little bit consistently set, and we don't have to. You don't need an interaction to limit the number of online interactions and posts to sort out modifiers and that kind of thing. It speeds it up because then we can. It's just the action posts as opposed to, okay, well, these are all the things that are going on, so therefore it's you get a +2 for that, -2 for that. You could do that in the out of character channel, which is fine, or if everybody just understands it. But I didn't need to prompt you guys with
Right.
modifiers that weren't part of your character.
Right.
So I think that helps. I don't necessarily think it's essential. Again, the biggest takeaway I think would be to, like I said, like schedule a time, maybe just an hour a week or whatever for synchronous play. We fell into it sometimes, but there's the danger there of 3 out of the 4 of us are fully engaged,
Yeah.
and the other one is I have to go to a meeting right now, or it's time for dinner, or like I can't. And the worst feeling is like seeing all those things like pop up on your phone, and you can't like things are going, like you're at dinner and you're like it's like bzz, bzz. And then you're not present. Then you're not present in the things that you should be present in your real
Right.
life. Which
Right.
there's you got to do that too. I think that's maybe the big thing was it was prompting me to be the balance of game life, real life, kind of slid a little too hard towards game life.
Right.
And if you're not careful there, then your real life relationships with your coworkers, your friends, and family, kids, like you can be like not there when you should be.
Yep. Yep. So one of the other things that I kind of wanted to talk about was you're like a huge fan of Free League and Year Zero. What has been your takeaway from running those games, and like what is it about the Year Zero engine that you like so much?
I think what I like about it, and they're well, one, they're all not as similar as they seem, and I think that's what's cool about it, right? Like, so once I figured that out, then I was like, oh, I need to own all of these so that I can look at the differences. Because again, it goes back to that, like figuring out how rules correspond to setting is interesting. And Year Zero is very flexible. They have like there's like 2 branches of it now. There's the dice pool, which is the older version, and then the dice step, which I think so far has only been used in Twilight 2000 and Blade Runner, which are the 2 games that we kind of have going back and forth a little bit. I really like it because it is very simple. It has more granularity than like your basic OSR-ish game, as far as like especially something like Cairn, or even like really Mothership has granularity in places, but it's kind of like inconsistently, like what it's trying to do kind of changes in the different kind of subsystems a little bit. Whereas year zero is it's very consistent. It's usually just a simple +1, -1 for any kind of modifiers, maybe up to 2 or 3, it caps out at a certain point. So once you kind of have got it, it's very easy to just riff and be close enough. And that's like the big lesson of like all my gaming is, and I kind of learned this through, kind of shift gears back a little bit, learned this through looking at the differences between the different versions of D&D. Everybody, OSE-BX is like the lingua franca, right? But there's also Sword and Wizardry and like the things that spun out of it. And then there's the kind of the AD&D variants, and looking at people that are describing like how, okay, all these are pretty compatible. Really, the only difference is usually like in armor class. Even once you convert, whether you're going, ascending or descending, it doesn't matter. Once you convert it to the same thing and you're looking at it side by side, there might be a difference of an armor class difference of like 1 or 2, which really what you're talking about is in any given roll, you're looking at a variable of 5%, does it matter?
Right.
And the answer is, it might. And certain people, we have all different brains, right? Like, and some people will like be upset about that. But if you just go with it, most of the time it's not gonna matter, because all we want is we want resolution. We want, did the hit land or not? A 5% difference is only going to matter 5% of the time, where you would almost miss. And as long as you don't get hung up on that, like, oh, I rolled this, and if this was a D&D version of that, or a first edition version of that, I would have missed or hit or whatever. As long as you're not doing that. But with year zero, you're looking for just to get a number of successes. You get more successes. I like that it gives you kind of more variance in the degree of success because of that, the way it works. So, if you get 2 or 3 additional successes, and like in combat, like you can apply that in very specific ways. Right. It might just be a cue to me as the GM in a non-combat situation to just like go with my gut and like best possible outcome. Like, oh, and you get this, and you find this out, and they also share this other bit of information that I've been waiting to give you guys. And that kind of thing. So I really like it that way. It's simple within the rule set. It's consistent. Not one of the things I was hoping for as I investigated it is that the systems would be more cross-compatible. Like, if I wanted to, like, we're playing an alien game and I want like to make it like a new xenomorph or something, could I just kind of reskin something out of like Forbidden Lands? And it's like, not really, not directly, because they do change they use some of the same mechanical pieces, but change the flavor of it a little bit. Sometimes like 2 mechanics will get combined into one thing. That might mean 2 different things now. You just use the same number. But anyway, it's fun to look at that. And then one of the things I appreciate about them too is that they are, Twilight 2000, I think particularly, is they all do a very good job of using procedures. They don't always do a great job of describing the procedure in a way that you don't have to kind of piece it together out of a paragraph of text. I would like, and I think they're doing this more. So the Coriolis, the Great Dark, like it has like flow charts for the procedures, which is awesome. And it's also kind of leaning more into as you delve into the ancient alien temple or whatever, like you're kind of procedurally generating it. That may be like a carryover from a non-year zero engine game, the One Ring, with what they did with Mori. I'm not really sure, but it's nice to have that laid out so that you can quickly use it. I end up making like little Post-it notes that I stick around, like for, like in your Twilight 2000, like, okay, the travel procedure, it's there and it's clear. But it isn't just here it is. This is
Right.
what, these are the four steps in a a travel turn. So I had to kind of like put that together, and it's easy, but they're doing that more, in that they in the way that they do their like the modules for like and the campaigns for Forbidden Lands. They do really good kind of hex crawling stuff, with a lot of tables to help you generate what's happening. And again, having those tools, and that I think is a very old school kind of thing that's come to the fore as people want to get away from the kind of traditional adventure path. Is here you are in this thing. The game master doesn't necessarily need to know what's going to happen next because you have the tools in front of you to create that. And because that's the way the game is meant to be played, you are not as concerned about the act of putting that together at the table
Right.
being a distraction or lessening engagement. It's just the way it is, right? And then once everybody understands that, it's not jarring, it's not anything like that. It's like, hey, this is you turn a card over, or I roll on a few tables, and here is this person that you're interacting with. It's good. With that, the more detailed portions of that, it can be good to just like generate that ahead of time if you can. It only takes like 15 minutes. And then like, so as part of my prep, like I might do that, like roll on those things and then just set it aside and kind of ponder it before we play.
Right.
Because it always turns into something different once you guys, once the chaos factor of player choice goes in there, like it gets kind of blown up. But if you've thought about it, you can roll with it. And if you need to roll again, you just do it.
Yeah.
I like using like an oracle. Often I'll just whatever die I see, I'll just grab it and be like, okay, what's a reasonable percent chance that the thing that they're asking is true or is happening or they find or whatever, and just roll it and go, nope, yes, maybe. Here we go.
Cool, man. Well, dude, this has been a fascinating conversation into the mind of Carl D. Um, Usually I ask people like at the end of the show what kind of advice you'd offer a novice or a veteran game master. Um, we've talked a lot about game mastering and a lot of like advice and stuff like that. Is there anything that you would offer on that front that we haven't really already talked about?
Um, I think if I would just kind of like sum it up, like the things that we've talked about, like why do I like them? Why are they good? Right? It's find your procedure, and kind of try to stick to that, whether it's the one that's provided to you or one you pull from somewhere else. Procedures too are completely modular. Like procedures just the order of operation for applying the mechanics of the game, right? Um, Combat's always every system pretty much will give you the combat procedure. They may not give you clear procedures about how to do other things. Uh, so you want to be a game master, great book, has those in there. A lot of it's geared. The examples used are towards mostly fifth edition D&D, but again, he's talking about adding things that aren't in that, or aren't clearly expressed. So you can use those things like whether how to build a investigative scenario using a 3 crew rule, that kind of stuff. It's there, and it teaches you how to use it. It teaches you how to do a dungeon crawl or a location crawl. And so you can grab those things and you can put them into, I think, really just about any game. So that like have your procedures, because that is your guide. That is your like handrail to deal with the situations as they arise. New situation, you can use the standard procedure, describe action, describe the change. Or if you need a more detailed one, you can use that, and bring it in there. And then have the tools, like prep tools, not scenarios. Like think about the things that you might need in the game, like, and have those handy. So if you have, the NPCs that you want to introduce or could be introduced based on where the players are, have those at hand, and described in a way that you can use them. Again, that so you want to be a game master gives you a way to do that. I think Mothership does an awesome job with their first party modules in particular in presenting NPCs in ways that are easy to digest and then just roll with. And then like your random tables for encounters and that kind of stuff, and have that ready. And that's kind of, just it, like my prep before we play. I usually prep Saturday morning, get up early, and then I'm just making sure I have all the things that I think I might need ready to go. And then it's the game is a machine that is, you can't understand it until you turn it on, right? But you can have your tools, your diagnostic kits, and that and your wrenches ready to go and laid out to where you can grab them. So when you turn it on and it sputters a little bit or whatever, you can make that adjustment, push it the right direction, so that it starts running smooth.
That reminds me of that scene from, I think it's Armageddon, when they're on the space station. They pick up the Russian guy on the space station. I think it's Armageddon. And he's like, "This is how you fix things on Russian space station." And he takes the wrench and starts smashing it.
Sometimes you need to do that. Yep.
Yeah. Sometimes players need to be hit with wrenches. That's what Carl D says. Don't really do that. Don't do that in real life.
Yeah, it's hard to do online, but
yeah, I'm sure you would if you could. Also reminds me of another great movie, Dodgeball. If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball.
Absolutely. Yep. If you can roll a die, you can run a game.
There you go, man. All right. Well, this has been a great talk, Carl. Thank you so much for being on the show and helping plunge the dungeon and flush evil down the drain. Please follow the podcast on Facebook, Instagram, Bluesky, and on Discord. You can talk to Carl D there. Maybe if you beg and plead, he'll let you join his gaming group. And until next time, Union members, plungers up.
Plungers up.
That's all for this week, folks. Music and stingers by Reed Reimer of Fable Factory Studio. Cover art by John McNally. And a special thanks to Edward Vallee, the voice of Hecktor.
Greetings, listener. This is I, Hecktor, the real dungeon plunger, not that milk drinker Jason. We in the dungeon always appreciate whatever love you can give us. So please, share the podcast, send your messages, and do anything that will unclog our algorithm. We really appreciate it. Plungers up!
And remember, when you're plunging in the dungeon and nature calls, watch out for mimics disguised as toilets. They're a pain in the butt.